So, thanks again for joining the stream once more. I managed to convince both Mynnna and Fuzzy Steve to join me tonight because listening to me ramble by myself is boring, and listening to me ramble with two other people is going to be more interesting, or at least so I'm told. So, thanks again for joining the stream, guys.
At least less boring, anyway.
No problem.
The theme I wanted to bring at least Mynnna on for the absolute least, but Fuzzy Steve is a added bonus on there, was that I wanted to talk about specifically direct speculation going into Crius or Sirius or whatever we're calling it, and I sort of wanted to address on some of the bigger trends, what we're excited about and what we're watching out for, and maybe some of the secret sauce, or some subterfuge as to what we want the secret sauce to be. That should be fun, I hope.
I guess we'll find out.
So if we want to go ahead and start with the questions already posted in the channel so far, and you can post either in the chat channel or on TweetFleet to @HLabIndustry, or those basically the two places I'll take them right now. Anything else, you can also comment on my blog, and I'll answer it after the show as best I can. But to get it here on the air, we'll do it those two places. The first question comes from Pure Sugar, which was, with all of these industry changes and everybody dogpiling onto the stuff, is there really going to be any ISK to be made, or is it just going to be undercut by all the new participants?
Yeah, sure. You'll just have to be smarter than all of them, and that shouldn't be that hard, right?
Yeah. Competition will probably cut down some of the margins available, but that will even out because it takes a certain mindset to actually want to do industry. So that'll even out, I think.
On a regular basis, yeah. I mean, what I expect to happen, maybe not necessarily right away, but after a month or so, is we'll start to see margins actually open up some, because the cost to build, especially the install costs and everything, will be not only larger but far more variable. And so you will have some people who will be content to just, maybe big time producers who will be content to just stay wherever they go and plop themselves down. And if people come through their system and bump the usage a bit, they're not going to notice too much. They're the major contributor there. And other places you'll have, small timers or serious people willing to put in serious amounts of effort to move their operations around, getting the lower build cost, or lower install costs rather. But no one group is going to be able to supply everything. So
Yeah, I'm expecting for most products for things to sort of settle around a worst case price. So if you're really building in the most crowded system with no particular bonuses, and you have the worst skills, you're going to make no money or lose a little bit of money. But I expect those who have put effort into making sure they have the right supply chain and the right blueprints at the right levels, and have moved their operation to somewhere that suits their needs to actually have somewhere to compete in. And I think there's a lot of, I know Grayscale's messing with all of the blueprint numbers, and I'm really excited to see a much wider set of decisions to be made beyond just cost. There's going to be a far more dynamic time problem to solve. So you'll have a better spectrum from completely unemployed and plays Eve 23 hours a day, to the I can log in once a week, and there should still be reasonable options across all of that, because the times are moving out. I think we're going to see a lot less individual bandwidth, leading to more general margin. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, I think you covered it all pretty much.
Yep. I
One thing
think
to remember is I don't know if worst case is the right scenario to look at, but pretty close to it, just because Eve players are lazy on average. I mean, just look at how people prefer to rat or to mine or to run missions. It's usually as lazy as possible. So the the worst case is more likely or closer to what we'll probably see.
yeah. There are some real changes which should be coming with the whole landscaping thing. Like it used to be, you'd never put a POS up in a system without a station if you're going to have anything serious there. But now you pretty much stations aren't going to make much of a difference, except for increasing the number of hours of industry which will be done in that system. Granted, there's also the multiplier, which then reduce the costs a bit, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly how that works out. I'm going to be very interested to get my hands on the numbers for that. And what was it? 2.5 billion hours? Sorry, 2.5 billion minutes of industry done per 28 days, I think.
Yeah, something like that. I was actually low on the estimate that I'd come up with, even counting all the real speculative stuff in my blog post a while ago. I was sort of surprised at that. Although with data 2 years old, maybe I shouldn't have been.
That is true. I am a little annoyed that we get pictures of the data, but we don't get better data points. I miss Diagrass and the fun facts.
I do too, but from an objective perspective, his distribution of them was like far too limited. A lot of the stuff that he put out was way too powerful to, again, objectively put into such relatively limited distribution.
This is true. Well, maybe we can see under the hood when they if the what is it. Dr. Economist, before he left, was saying that they might open up some of the data for research papers and peer-reviewed papers, which I would really love to get my hands on some of that, but I don't have a great topic to ask about the data yet.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway, it's
Yeah.
far more fun digging into the data that you can get illicitly or however sideways than just being given the answers.
Yeah, there's it's interesting.
Something I'm really wanting to get my hands on is the data for doing the costing for jobs, because you're going to have some kind of clue what the multiplier for each system is, so you can generate kind of heat maps for where industry is actually going on. That's potentially going to be very interesting information.
Yeah, I agree on that one. And again, that equation's is kind of a pain in the ass when you really dig into it. I get that we can add all the parts together reasonably easy, and I have pretty good faith in Fox4 to give us API information that will make it so we can actually leverage the data out of game. Unless I can make an informed decision, it's just another cost. It's a tax. It's an intangible, right?
Yeah, it's
I'm
there.
I'm mostly just wanting it so I can build it into the calculators, which I'm going to be doing, because while the industry screen is a good one, it doesn't quite cover all the situations which you might want. They did say, I think that they're planning for a later release, the experimental version, so you can just adjust the numbers to see how it works out. But that's not quite enough for some of the bigger scale stuff.
Well, yeah, because the whole UI is centered around individual jobs, and I know at least when I'm doing big scale stuff myself, I care about kits of jobs. So I don't care about the individual run of 10 whatever. I care about running 1,000 of them in groups of 100, and how's that all going to bottom out when I put it all in? and there's enough little niggling things that I can't just put in the whole 1,000 order and see the right number on the outset. So it will require some extra horsepower outside of game, but this is just leaps and bounds ahead of. It at least gives you a channel for ingress for if you've never done industry, if you've always been the I just blow shit up and I don't care about the guys who build things are Care Bears and cowards. It gives that guy a way to go in and go, oh, I could save money if I built it myself, or oh, no, if I did it myself, it would be terrible and I'd lose all this money. I should go buy that on the market.
That's kind of what you're going to expect from the UI, though. I'm sure CCP could build tools as extensively as players do if they did nothing else.
Well, and to make me 100% happy would make a lot more people very unhappy.
There is also that, yes.
Because I want, in my perfect world, I imagine the EVE industry being like the production floor at work, where you have to schedule your time across testers, and the hardware to do the work is extremely expensive, so you can't buy new ones, and steps need to be recycled, and it's super complicated, and it just makes me giggle with glee when I get to mess with it, but that's way too complicated and boring for a real game.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a design engineer, and that sounds like not all that much fun even to me.
Yeah, so I'm a
At least the
terrible
level you're
customer.
taking it to.
I'm a terrible customer. All right, this URL not found on Twitter sent forward the question. He's a PvPer and hasn't done industry since 2008, but may have some assets floating around, or some may want to look into it now. Uh, is there a single important thing to train or get or work on between now and release that's worth getting ahead of the game on?
Well, skills-wise, it's going to depend on what, if anything, he's got trained already. But I mean, get your 10 slots for research and production alike would be the first thing.
Absolutely, definitely. I have a make an industry alt blog tutorial on my blog that gets you the 10 slots and gets you all of the production efficiency and gets you into T2. It takes 3 months, unfortunately, from straight zero, but that's a reasonably complete. I can do almost everything by the time you're done with it. Steve, do you have anything that you're particularly advocating for uh, getting prepared for launch day?
Not so much. Probably, if you can get stuff researched up over 10 for ME, do so.
Up to 10, not over 10.
Yeah, you knew what I meant. And
Listeners might not have.
okay. Yeah, just get them researched up. So with the research times, it is changing. So the higher levels become more expensive. Obviously, for some stuff, you're not going to get it up significantly, so it may not be worth it. I'm hoping to get some of the blueprint stuff calculated out beforehand, but you can always just test it on CC to see what the difference will be. Other than that,
Well, and the conversion rate
no,
isn't
yeah.
ME10 TQ to ME10 Crius. It's whatever the percentage waste is now will most likely be how they calculate the ME, correct? When everything converts.
In general, I think it's 10 to 10. when you up to that level, because by that point you're below one on waste. Well, you're below 1% on waste when you hit ME10. Can't remember what the exact number is, but it's the way it works out.
Yeah, the conversion is floating around somewhere in one of the original dev logs, and as far as I know, they have not changed it.
Yeah, that research thing is definitely on my personal to-do list. I'm trying to get all of the supporting blueprints to do Tech 2. Make sure all of my kits are filled out the way I like them.
Yeah, I need to do that. That's part of my prep. I have a lot of research to do.
Yeah, I have like 20 of each of the components.
The ironic thing is that I've only ever done a very, very little invention myself. I don't do it for a living or anything, so nothing on the scale like what either of you do.
Yeah, actually,
Familiar with how it works, but setting up a large operation for continued use, not so much.
Yeah. I'm, to be honest, not a huge scale. I'm only pushing through maybe 3-4 billion a month.
Well, but if you want to do like ships, for instance, is the one where that hung me for a while, was that you just need so many freaking components to do ships at a level where you can really churn a lot of ISK. Since
Yeah.
the problem when you're investing big, right, is that the more you want to put in the market, the harder it is to keep your margin, to maintain your margins on that much money, because that could crash whatever you're working on, or you have all these other things of scale that mean you have to, well, I'll take a little bit less margin, but I can put a lot more ISK into it, so I'll make a lot more net on the end.
Yeah, well, I'm counting on
Yep.
spreading out and leveraging out post bonuses to make it all work.
Yeah, I ended up the big thing that saved my bacon was having a calculator that showed me what the buy cost and build cost was and hours cost for components. And so I ended up to the point where I was buying about half by time the components off the market, because I was only spending like 1% on the buy-in, buying them off market, and I was like, oh well, if it's a 1% difference, why the heck would I build it myself?
Yeah. It's almost always worth just checking each of them, going, what's my ISK per hour on each of these? Some components, it's great. You'll make hundreds of thousands. Others, you can make losses if you're not careful. So it can be just worth buying a lot of the time.
So I've got a couple other questions lined up, but I kind of want to go on to the Gurgoons nullsec is going to kill industry question that everybody seems to be dancing around, because, well, things are going to be numbers are going to be better in nullsec, but the environment in and of itself might not be so for the individuals. So I sort of want to go around. What do you think the challenges for the nullsec producer is really going to be? The stuff, the intangibles, the things that might bite
Transport.
them when they're trying to yeah.
Transport.
Okay, well, now that we have that topic answered.
Yeah. So we've got these great bonuses at the Tech 1 level, the Minmatar outpost, if we can get ore at a good price, represents up to an up to 17% cost advantage. The Amar factories have pretty sizable bonuses to build time when fully upgraded. A 5% ME bonus if fully upgraded with both level 2 and level 3 production lines, and then something that a large just generic bonus to the install fee. Same deal with the research outposts; those research faster and cost less. The advantages are large. On the other hand, everything's going to be a lot more concentrated. We will have less ability to spread out. because especially going into the patch first off, we're going to have maybe 2 Amar outposts fully upgraded, and there aren't all that many in Declan to begin with.
Yeah. Then you've got, even once you've got everything moved into nullsec, like I bring in a jump freighter that's full of compressed ore, so I take that to my fully upgraded Amar outpost and refine it. Sorry, Mynnna outpost and refine it. And
Right.
great, that's lots. I now have what, about
Call it
12,
60
yeah,
battleships worth of minerals.
yeah, but it's about 12 freighter loads to move to another station if you want to take advantage of the Amar bonus. So there's effort involved there, and it's not fun effort.
Yeah, and I mean the freighter rigs help a little bit there, or not rigs, sorry. Freighter low slots help a little bit there in increasing shipping capacity, but at the end of the day, it's 10 freighter loads instead of 12. It's not like we're suddenly spending one trip instead. So I expect a lot of maybe the smaller time producers out in our space will bring their minerals in and just build right there in the Minmatar outpost, or buy their minerals there, or whatever, rather than putting in the effort for the transport. And it's something that I've sort of prodded CCP about, because at the end of the day, you got to ask, is that bonus in the Minmatar station or in the Amar station really worth all that transport effort for? I think a fair number of people will decide yes, and I mean it's definitely you've got the problem where it's definitely a good bonus for Tech 2, and all the stuff you're building for Tech 2 is a lot lower volume, a lot easier to move. So balancing the two of those is a little difficult. You can't just make it a global bonus. You can't just say, "Oh, we'll bump it to 10% material efficiency instead," because now you're making Tech 2 production that much better.
Yeah, that's true. I'm wondering, with your own Tech 2 plans, as vague as they may be, uh, the stuff that's worth putting a ton of money into and getting decent margin out of, the stuff that's worth putting 7 or 8 characters behind is going to tend to be ships, and getting those exported is going to be a pain, regardless of how you cut it. Like, getting the stuff in, it's not that big a deal. Between, you might be able to build some of it, you might be able to offload some of the build or do some of the buying, so you're just buying raw materials and then using the ME bonus as opposed to building your own components. But I'm wondering, are you planning to move all that stuff out to Jita? Are you worried about the freight size going out? Is it just going to stay in Declan as local supply?
I mean, I don't know. Ideally, what I would really want to see is that, yes, all of our Tech 2 and a good portion of our Tech 1 just gets built and sold and consumed locally. Lord knows the market for Ishtars is large enough, but anything else I'm not so sure. But at the end of the day, if I'm feeling lazy, I can pay our jump freighter services whatever they raise their rates to after the changes, to move, be like 350 ISK per cubic meter or something. So a hack would cost me, what, 3.5 million ISK to move out to Jeddah? That's not really all that much.
This is true.
But the ideal is going to be anyone. Well, I don't want to say anyone, but a certain percentage of anyone wanting to do production of any kind really will be able to get their materials locally, because we have huge reaction farms out there. A fair bit of mining, but most of that's going to be imported. And then we'll be able to sell a lot of their stuff locally as well. And then we'll get big chunk of broker fees off that too, I imagine.
Are you expecting that particular situation to also be valid in renter spaces, not just CFC spaces, but also the other ones, because I'm bad at space politics?
I think individual corps out in whoever they're renting from may be able to do that. You'll see a little bit more, not necessarily working together amongst neighbors, but at least cooperating to share stations and so forth to make it work. But at the end of the day, no, not really. Renters just by nature tend to be kind of diffuse. You don't have the localized central demand, the localized central supply. I don't know what anyone is going to be doing for upgrades for stations in renter space either. I'm looking at that one for our own renter space and kind of scratching my head because I could spend the entire the entire income each month and only be able to do 4 stations a month.
Yeah, and I should really go scrape the numbers up and start working out the hours that it would actually get to for most of the open market stuff. Because though we shouldn't see much of a change in build times, the amount of effort for invention times and somewhat copy times, it's worse for modules than it is for ships. I think is going to make a lot of the other secondary math kind of funny, and I think that a bunch of people are going to jump in with 2 feet, thinking, "Oh, I can just print ISK with this, regardless of whatever you've set it up to be." Just reading the dev blogs, and I think there's going to be a lot of wait, what? Like people getting really surprised by where their time or money or effort is actually getting spent as opposed to where they think it was going to be.
And as you said earlier, a lot of people probably going to lose their shirts.
Well, but that's speculation always. And that's kind of the best part about any patch.
Yeah, well, that to dive down that path a little bit. The comment from whoever else it was on Twitter that speculation is just gambling, sort of made me chuckle, because I mean, in a sense, he's actually right. But I mean, think about a poker player. A professional poker player always knows the odds for his hand, and is never. Well, I don't want to say never, but is always playing with those odds in mind. And so when he makes a bet. Excuse me, I'm not very coherent tonight. Makes a bet based on what he's got and based on his odds, and it's a calculated risk, and it's the same thing with good speculation. It's not like you're just buying shit randomly. You're looking at the dev blogs, at info off of Chaos, wherever you can get the information and taking into account to maximize your knowledge, and then you look at what your risk is and how you can minimize that.
Well, and I think a lot of people get messed up on thinking that speculation is just who gets to the market first after a dev blog hits. Because there's so much secondary and tertiary stuff going on that it's its own endeavor, it's its own strategy.
Yeah, no, and I mean the dev blog hitting is usually your last chance for the primary stuff. But you're absolutely right that there's downstream effects on a lot of major changes. One thing when people ask me, how do you learn how to do speculation well, that I say is just okay, just go learn everything about the game. Because if you know everything about the game, then when something changes, you can figure out what's going to change in those downstream effects, the tertiary or secondary or quaternary effects.
Yeah, and personally, I'm an advocate for even when the dev blogs come out, there are still opportunities on the whole. I knew that you knew that I knew that you knew, kind of counter speculation stuff. And that's also a valid spot to go looking for things. Like, I made an absolute killing in Odyssey with jump freighters because I knew that everybody knew that the materials were going to change, that the raw materials going into the components were going to change, and because jump freighters have such a long build time and all of that, I was able to ride out the new the new market adjustments to their new levels and use old prices to actually get sold out. So it's not just, oh, it's one thing and it's solved. There's a lot of other game going on.
Yep.
Unfortunately, my latest speculation, which I normally don't do because I'm normally far too late, hasn't worked out so well yet. But hopefully long term it will work out. It's with the cap power relays, the basic range, because you can fit a basic one and two of the regular ones on a jump freighter.
Oh, that's an interesting bet.
Yeah,
See,
and
that's not one I would have made, personally.
yeah,
Just because good jump freighter practice dictates that you should never be in a position where where your cap recharge should matter at all.
there is that, yeah. But it didn't. It's not a huge investment. We're talking a few $100 million, and well, as I've bumped the price up to about 4 times what I paid. Yeah, it's small scale, really, because it's not something I do.
Every time I try to do traditional market speculation where you just buy it and wait for the thing to happen, I always eat shit directly. It is the most hilarious thing. Like, I bought into Plex back in the fall, and like the week after I bought in, because I'm thinking, oh, there was a sale. The sales drive the prices down, and then a week or 10 days afterwards, the prices come back up. I can make a cool chunk of profit off that, and then blink liquidates everything. So
Yeah.
just bad luck, Brian, on my part.
Yeah, that one's more bad luck than anything else, and especially when you're not playing around near a patch, that can happen sometimes. There will be a bigger fish out there who will do whatever. Goes for manipulation as well, perhaps even more so, but that's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I had a similar problem when I built my first jump freighter, is that I was like, oh man, this is such a great investment. And then by the time it finished building, the market had started fluxing, and I lost something like 10% of the margin. I'm like, no! So, yeah, I just have terrible luck with these things. Because even though the math says I tend to screw it up somehow, there's always some secondary thing I forgot.
For my part, I'm still sitting on massive piles of moon materials back from Odyssey. Being on CSM and everything, it's a safe thing to just kind of sit and let it appreciate in value, even if it's kind of boring.
Yeah, that's one of the things with being on the CSM. You have to be very, very careful about when you do things, because even if it's stuff which is public, you've got to make sure that other people know it's public. Otherwise, they will accuse you of exploiting your position.
Yeah, that happened with me in freighter rigs. I had a doctor's appointment on the morning that Fozzie announced, yeah, we're not going to do the rigs after all, and forgot something back at home. So before heading back down to work, I go back to home to get what I forgot, and come in the door and stop by the computer just to take a peek. And just after I walked in, he posted it. So I go and dump all the, I don't know, like 10 billion ISK worth of salvage that I'd bought, and see a thread later that day. Someone was like going, hey, what's up here? He dumped like the same minute that the post went up.
Oh man, that shitstorm was hilarious. There were a bunch of people in my corp who lost their shirts over that because they were like, "Oh, I'm going to do all this stuff," and I was so close to buying into Tech 2 Capital Rig production. Like that weekend, I would have done it. So I got more luck than skill on that one.
The funny thing there is I went and, was buying in on the salvage even as I was thinking, rigs are kind of maybe I should suggest low slots instead. And, working on that spreadsheet with the numbers and the posts that I made publicly and everything. So kind of abusing my position to work against myself in that case, I guess.
You're doing that corruption thing backwards.
Apparently so. But because I sold like right after he posted the dev blog, I still made out like a bandit anyway.
So the next question I have is after we talked at length about the nullsec stuff, where do you guys actually see the low sec bonuses falling out? Personally, I've been picking on capital producers, solo capital producers, because they've been crying tears and tears and tears about how all of the changes are completely destroying their particular meta, and
And you don't.
I don't care because I'm not in caps, so their tears are my joy.
I mean, I don't know for sure, honestly. Like I said earlier, Eve players are lazy, and building in a POS is somewhat more effort than building in a station. But on the
And
other
more risk.
hand, and more risk, yes, there is that. On the other hand, though, I mean, if a low sec builder is wanting to properly take advantage of the bonuses available to him, he's going to be using a POS after Crius anyway, so that he can use an intensive refining array to refine his imported compressed ore. So the right way to do things is actually going to become a POS with your refining array and some component arrays and just as many build arrays as you can fit on there and feel safe doing so. So the opportunity is there. It still probably is a bit more effort, but we'll see. You know whether people decide to take it or not. Um,
Well, because
People is one of those things that I can't necessarily predict as well as the markets themselves.
yeah, the coin toss in my mind was that the bonus on the Thucker array is just freaking juicy, right? It's actually juicy enough that I'm thinking, oh, how can I put it into my personal lines? And
Well, before you think too far on that, it has component like Tech 2 and Tech 3 component bonuses listed on it, but that was posted as being a mistake. So it is a
oh,
capital only thing.
oh, capital
Yep.
components.
Capital and I believe advanced
Capital
component.
components, yeah.
Oh yeah, the
Yep.
capital T2 components like jump freighters.
Well,
Yep.
presumably. You'd think so, anyway.
Not that I'm asking for any particular reason.
Yeah, I can't possibly imagine why.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that's mentioned in one of the dev threads on it. Pretty sure.
Yeah, there was a blue post somewhere. The uncertainty you hear in Steve's voice is him trying to remember what's public versus what's not.
Yeah, if it stays a component bonus, which I'm sort of rooting that it would, I love the idea of having that as an option. I know that it kind of breaks things, and I can definitely hear the argument as to why I'm wrong. But I find it extremely interesting, being so, because when it comes to doing Tech 2 personally, it's absolutely about maximizing ISK, minimizing risk, and doing the least amount of effort possible, right? And the minimizing ISK part with the if the Thucker array does let you do Tech 2 regular components, sort of starts to flip my equation on the don't do industry and low sec thing, because traditionally everybody has gone through name the thousands of freaking posts everywhere that have been like, we need more industry and low sec, we need to as pirates be able to raid industry things because we only care about killing industry, not actually incentivizing people to want to build a farm
Right.
out there. And
It's
that
just
was
like the nullsec. Everyone thinks of the burning the farms and fields part, and not of how to make there be farms and fields.
yeah. And this particular module was just juicy enough for me to go, I would take the risk. Now, I would mitigate that risk with, putting on a Dick Star, and I'd probably be paying more for the job cost fees because I wouldn't be using the additional labs on the POS to lower the job cost, as was sort of explained on the dev blog. But
Not that it's a particularly major change anyway.
yeah, but that ME bonus was just so juicy that I'm like, how can I put that into my thing? I want to use it.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's going away, but you may still, if you build jump freighters, have the opportunity there, and you know, capital Tech 2 components are fast builds. I'm sure you can imagine how, with some effort, you minimize it. You know, you do your builds in 1 day chunks. There's your risk minimization. There's your minimal risk. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I just give away what you were thinking?
Ah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Jump
Of
freighters
course,
are so expensive. I don't expect a whole bunch of people to be speculating on them, and the times on the test server right now are absolutely ridiculous because the Tech 2 stuff, all the times are screwed up too.
Well, is it stuff's actually screwed up, or is it just you're looking at grayscale's changes and those are what they're going to be?
Well, I mean, screwed up is indifferent.
Okay. Yeah, actually, jump freighters, I'm looking at my spreadsheet right now with my before and after comparison. And with the latest numbers, it's not that big of a change. They take about 10% longer time to market overall. Excuse me, 10% more slot hours overall.
Well, the build I must have put it in before the numbers were correct because I'm looking at 21 days to build one, and I know that on
Yeah,
a
now see, I'm talking about the build time. Yeah, I'd have to go dig that off of the chart. It's the overall time for copying, building, and copying, inventing, and building it that I was looking at there.
yeah, that's
There's
probably
there's
true.
there's two different ways to look at it because it's you know the time to market is how many of my slots does this consume for how long, and
Well,
then
but
there's the build time,
yeah,
which
and
is
time to market is weird
actually making the thing.
since you can do things simultaneously, right? So the if you stagger your stuff, you could be researching the next one while you're building the first one, and
Well, sure. And I mean, the reason that I was looking at time to market is part of what I tied the numbers into. Is another spreadsheet I've got that's how much Moon Goo is the game using,
yeah.
and you know, so I wanted to take that. It's just G to sales volume of everything in the game, um, or every Tech 2 item in the game, I should say. I wanted to take that and apply the time to market changes to it and see how things would move. And when you're trying to look at the macro level like that, as you know, I want to look at everyone. It makes sense in that case because unless people train a bunch more characters, there is, you know, a given amount of slot hours for stuff, and so on average, changing the slot hours for stuff that something takes means the game is going to be producing more or less of it, or sorry, is going to be producing less of it, or have the opportunity to produce more of it.
This is true. And again, I'm the sort of guy who I never want to redesign the system. I just want to figure out how to win the system. So I'm always really bad at these testing things because I'm like, I don't care that it's broken. I can take that broken and run
Fix it
with
so
it.
that I can break it.
Like I'm okay with whatever you give me. I'm just gonna take those cards and play the best I can because that's just I never.
Teams are also going to make life a bit interesting with this.
I'm still trying to figure out if I love teams yet.
Yeah. I can, the biggest problem I can see with teams is the whole you're giving away something about the system you're building stuff in if it's not a major system. Um, but I'm not sure if that's a solid concern or not.
For the high sec stuff, and if you're just trying to specialize your own personal stuff, I don't think that's going to be as big an issue, but it's definitely going to be interesting for the super cap meta.
It doesn't really change anything for the super cap meta. Right now, because the current industry interface is stupid, anyone in an alliance can just open up the window or anyone not even in an alliance at all, for that matter, you can open up the window, and whether or not you can actually use the slots, you can see. Sorry, no, I think you do have to be in the alliance to be able to see the POS slots, but anyone in the alliance can see available slots in a POS, even if you can't use them. So you can just open up and, oh, look, there's a 30-day job. That must be a super cap.
I feel ashamed that I didn't know that particular hack.
So yeah, so I mean, it's kind of an open secret that no one's super cap yards are actually a secret.
Oh, that makes me sad. I was hoping that people would cry foul, especially when it came up on an API, that anyone could go see it at any time, and it would be like up on .lan or something.
Yeah, no. Now, I mean, depending on I haven't looked this closely at it in game, but if like a team indicates that it's actively being used or something, in the in
It
yeah.
doesn't, however, it does indicate which system it's in, and you can see what the
Yeah.
specialities are.
Right,
So
okay.
someone has
So
bid for that.
right, yeah, you can look and go, oh, okay, there's a Titan team out in that system. Well, clearly that's where the Titan. It doesn't change a whole lot at the end of the day, though. Pretty much everyone knows where everyone's super cap yards are if they want to. So
I'm still hoping that, at the absolute least, players can start producing those teams and not just have it randomly generated. Even if we don't get them
I mean,
privately.
on one hand, yes. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there. On one hand, yes, and on the other hand, I think the spawn figures or the spawn rate on them is public. I can't remember for sure. I'm pretty sure it is. But there's just not going to be a whole lot of them, and if players can, if players can make their own, that's one thing. But if it's like, let me make this team and then sell it, it's just going to be too easy to saturate the market. Is a big concern that I'd have.
Yeah, if it was going to be done that way, it would have to have a massive fail rate.
Yeah, or just a crazy low throughput per character. But if you make it too low, then nobody cares about producing one item of something a week or something. There's not a whole lot of
Yeah.
sexy in that.
Well, and I mean, it's if it's too low, they have to be outrageously expensive to be worthwhile to be worth selling them anyway, right? So you have a problem right there in that if they're too outrageously expensive, of course they're not worth buying and using. So I'm not sure that it would ever become feasible from that perspective, and I don't know that they'd want to give up the gameplay that exists around them by just letting anyone make their perfect team with exactly the stats that they want every time.
Yeah, I get the counter. I get the counterbalance problems because it's always my particular dream that everything's in the hands of the players because it's way more interesting that way. Even if it's
Yeah.
randomly generated, I get that we need the content, and I totally see the world your way. I just would love to see players in charge of it or have some sort of impact in improving them or something other than just the bid it out to keep other people from using it meta or the sort of like minor bumping level trolling meta.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. It would be fun if there were more things you could do with them, but you know. That's actually something I'm trying to decide if I can share or not, and probably not, so I won't.
Ah, you heard it here first, guys. There's a thing that we're not allowed to know.
Well, I mean, it was a thing that was suggested by another CSM member last term, so
Oh,
that's why I'm not quite sure.
that's fine. If it's private, it's private. I'm just giving you shit. So I'm kind of out of questions on the stream stuff. Again, if anybody out there listening to the stream wants to ask a question, feel free in the chat or on Twitter to @HLibIndustry. Uh, are there any particular parts that either you're excited about, or you want to talk about, or that you really that we didn't cover so far that you think is going to be really neat, or is going to make people mad and therefore funny? I don't know. Is there anything else you'd particularly like to talk about for the industry changes?
Well, I mean, people are going to be mad and it is going to be funny, but that's about all I have to say about that.
Yeah. I've seen a fair number of people who are saying this is going to ruin industry, etc., etc., etc. I think it's going to make it very interesting. The first month, 2 months, it's going to take a while to settle down. But once it has, I think there's a great deal of possibility with it, which is why I'm not screaming my head off.
Yeah, the only the so the stuff that I was most screaming about has been addressed. My biggest flag was I liked the idea of the needing your BPOs at a POS to research them to leverage them at the POS, but the fact that it opened you up to corp theft too easily kind of pissed me off. Just I shouldn't, if I set up my corp right, I shouldn't have to worry about corp theft 99% of the time. Uh, and that's been mostly addressed since you'd only really need the one lab. I still don't like the fact that you can have one lab and then you have a bunch of auxiliary stuff that's helping you reduce costs, but you're not actually using it. It's just sort of there as an attachment. So I think that's a little bit lame, but hopefully, fingers crossed, there are some iteration targets.
Yeah. I don't really have anything to say about that because it's not been particularly discussed. Yes, it is obviously a concern, but structured stuff is on the roadmap. So when that comes around, it will definitely be being brought up as something we would like to see something happening with.
Again, it comes down to if you ran a factory in real life, you'd have a certain amount of throughput problems, and if you needed more equipment, you have to buy more equipment. And I personally like some of the Minecraft, like Feed the Beasts factory stuff that says, well, if you're at under 25%, it's actually less efficient, and if you're 25 to 75%, you're in good efficiency, and then if you go above 75%, well, you're going to burn your stuff out, and it's going to be terrible efficiency again. And mechanics like that I really like because it gives me another level of depth. It might just be too much complexity for not a lot of value, but it's something that I think is worth investing in the future. I don't think it's an issue to start, but I think it's something worth keeping on the burners as it comes around.
Yeah. An example which has just come to mind on something which would be quite neat, I think, is the ability to specialize arrays. Like at the moment, you've got the equipment arrays, which are any module that you want. It might be interesting if you don't get the full 2% bonus, you only get a 1% bonus, unless you decide, I will now specialize this for shield modules, for example, or something along those lines. Have no idea how valuable it is. It probably would make someone who had to deal with postcode cry, but who knows?
Well, and I'm only slightly annoyed that we're losing slots because that it was not a great mechanic to do what it needed to do, but it provided a scarcity of that resource, and I would like to see some of that brought back. I'd like it to be more dynamic. I'd like it to be more controllable, and I'd like it to be so that you don't bomb out a station every time you try to build something and then nobody else can use it. I thought that was sort of crappy, but I'm hoping that I would hope that down the line we can talk about, well, if there are if you're doing too many jobs in a thing, well, now you're not actually getting the full bonus. You've run out the capacity of that bonus in concurrent jobs.
Yeah. Something I'm actually quite happy about is the changes with regards to, in the new player experience, you have to build something. And quite often people were going, there are no build slots here, what do I do? That's less of a problem now. Obviously, the cost may have to be adjusted in the future, but that's just something that's going to have to be looked at.
Well, and I love the fact that research will now actually be viable, and we're not forcing people into POS or GTFO kind of industry platform, because it quickly becomes untenable as an individual to do industry at a certain level. Like before you even get your second character, you're at a point where, like, well, if I build T2, I can't get enough copies, and if I do T1, well, I might not be able to get the slots I need because I'm in a busy spot. Or if I want to research any of it so I can actually be competitive with everyone else who has perfect blueprints, well, I can't even get blueprint research time, so I have to go get a POS, and I have to do the whole POS dance. And I'm glad that POS is now an actual choice. Like, I know I want a POS so that I can have blank, as opposed to, oh crud, I have to use a POS and I have no choice.
Yeah. The changes for the material efficiency skill, I think that's what they're calling it these days, are going to be beneficial there as well. The whole 5 or get the fuck out? Nah, not anymore. Thank God.
So I'm a little confused on that particular point. So and I might just have not read everything thoroughly yet. Was if I still come in with no production efficiency skill, and I go to build something, am I going to be making my margin on doing it somewhere where I'm saving the money on the job cost and the team, perhaps at some remote podunk station? Is that the way that I'll be able to compete against someone who has 5 who might be in a central location?
Uh, Pretty much, yeah. From what's been put out, it's going to be a reduction for every hour that you've got the job running. I think it's a reduction in the cost for the subsequent runs, and the scale is just going to be a cap on that. I don't know if we've seen the actual numbers for that kicking around, but it's, yeah, for small scale stuff, it's not going to have a particularly big effect. For stuff where you're willing to let it run for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, then yeah, it's going to be a bigger change. But yeah, for beginners, it's nowhere near. Well, it's not going to be the 25%, or is it 20%? Whatever. It's not going to be that big a difference, I think. So it's going to be less than the probably 10-ish%.
Oh, and then I have one more bug or feature question that you guys might want to bring back to CCP in one of your meetings. So we're moving T2 BPOs to a much higher material cost, and I love that change. I am so tired of arguing with people about T2 BPOs.
Get owned BPO holders.
Yeah, and frankly, I hate T2 BPOs because I would never actually own one myself because they're such a terrible investment in my opinion. Like, I've never seen the math done where I'm like, oh, that's actually something I'd buy. I keep looking at it like, are you insane? What are you doing with your life?
So, funny thing on that, the Death to Tech 2 BPOs post I wrote like a couple weeks ago, I linked an auction in that post with like the last Zealot BPO that I saw someone trying to sell in the forums, and he turned down a 160 billion-esque offer for it, which I sort of ridiculed as, hey, look, this guy turned down 13 years worth of profit. 3 or 4 days ago, he got in touch with me via email and was sort of upset that I had been ridiculing him and thought that I should know better and that it's only 5 years 5 years worth of profit, because naturally, especially back around that time, anyone buying them would, of course, take it out to nullsec and build in a tier 3 MR outpost. And I just sort of sat back and reflected upon the insanity of thinking that 5 years was just completely, especially when it hinges on living uninterrupted in nullsec for 5 years straight, that he thought this was sane. It's just, ugh.
Well, and so my point isn't so much the BPO thing, because I just wanted the fanboys to stop crying about T2 BPOs ruining the game. It's more that I don't understand with the new ME, that paired with the new ME changes, how viable decryptors will be. Like, I get that some of the balance will change to I can reduce my research cost per run with some of them, but right now decryptors pay for themselves with the ME bonus. And
Yeah,
the difference between positive steps is nowhere close to the difference between negative steps.
Yeah.
yeah. Decryptors are a little broke. Well, will be a little broken with this. Invention is up for work. Maybe not in the release after Crius, but the development is going to be starting after Crius is released. It's just which release it actually, which part of the train it comes in on. But yeah, it is going to get reworked and kind of has to get reworked because it's broken. But it's not broken anywhere near as badly as it used to be.
Well, yeah, and we shouldn't have, for anyone who hasn't been in the market, is that underneath a certain threshold, the price collapses because it's only BPO producers building it, because no one would invent for a loss. And so you see that a lot on ships, like the stuff that just nobody really flies. If you go and you try to go build a Selepner today,
Command ships, yeah.
there's no money in it. It's a great way to burn a lot of money, because you'll never be able to compete with T2 BPOs, and the market volume just doesn't need more than the Tech 2 BPOs can provide. And so, thankfully, that should be going away, and the fanboyism should be going away, and this insane desire to have this 5-year-old or 6-year-old mechanic drive the market should be starting to retire, tiers notwithstanding.
I still think they should just go and delete them one day, personally, because it would be the greatest tiers.
I always imagined that if I were Mr. Chief Economist guy, who I can never say his name, that I'd just start taking the money and buying them out so they stopped existing. Right? You'd go and you'd find ones that had. You'd sort of just agree on a price internally, and you'd say, "Fine, we'll buy out that auction," and it'll go into a way to try and retire them faster. I know that that's a way of just printing ISK, and it's not exactly the most stable thing to do, but I just sort of always imagine that if you ever really wanted to get rid of them, you just quietly buy them out on alt characters.
Funnily enough, I saw just the other day someone who I think actually holds quite a few was arguing that, imagine there's this many, and I guess it's like 3,500 is the estimate in the game, and that they're all worth an average of 100 billion ISK. Would it really do all that much if CCD just reimbursed everyone for those? For those that are slow at math, that's 350 trillion ISK he's talking about, just shooting straight into the economy.
Well, and I would never want to go directly and just say, "Okay, I'm buying out your crap," or even to just do a fire sale offer of, "Do this, or we're deleting it anyway, so take it or leave it." It just seems like you could eminent domain that crap.
Yeah. On the decryptors thing, I'm trying to find where it was, and maybe I made it all up and it's all in my head, but I had been looking at those and sort of, oh, there it is. Trying to estimate, which would be useful, if any. And I don't think they're going to be useless. It's obviously going to depend on where the prices go, on both the items and the decryptors themselves after the patch, but every race and virtually every type of item that I looked at, there was a decryptor that was the optimal choice rather than no decryptor.
Yeah,
Now the decryptor that was the optimal choice is different, sometimes very significantly from the decryptor that is the optimal choice today. But it did exist.
Yeah.
So the problem is that there's only one optimal choice.
Yeah, something which some people won't possibly have realised. Multiple runs are far more valuable under the current system, under the new system, than they used to be, other than obviously reducing invention costs, because the rounding is all applied at the end rather than at the beginning. Well, rather than per run. So something which would have been just a small reduction can become reasonably significant, and that kicks in a hell of a lot more when you're dealing with T2 BPOs than it does with BPCs, because you can run it for 100 runs, and that 2% reduction in the pulse just became, well, 2 free modules. So it makes a
Right.
bit of a difference.
yeah, I expect, like you said, I expect we go from the most efficient ME decryptors to the most efficient runs, and I don't expect that the
Well,
attainment ones
it'll
are to
be
be
a
the
mix of
best.
runs and time, because runs, either one of them especially with so much emphasis being put on invention now, as the time sink. Either one of them increases your ISK per hour.
Yeah, I mean, the way it is currently, there still is sort of a one or two decent options, and the rest are just crap. Especially when it comes to modules, you just don't really use decryptors on most modules. So I'm hoping that in the interim we still have some use for them, because I still think they're a valuable mechanic in and of themselves, because it's another choice, it's another optimization. And if you're willing to do the legwork, you can improve your margins. I worry that the current margins will just completely destroy the market for decryptors. And as I say this and it goes out on the market, I'm sure that people are going to speculate the living crap out of it too.
Oh, they already have been.
Oh, okay,
There have
cool.
been
As
some
long as I'm
kind
not
of
breaking the
entertaining.
news.
Yeah. No, I actually, I mean, the spreadsheet that I made actually prompted me to get out of decryptors because I decided that all the shit was too much all over the place to be it was a risk mitigation thing on the speculation. I decided there's too much variance here for this to be safe. I'm going to take the profit I can on the backs of the other people getting into the market and get out.
Just to keep Sugar happy, unreasonably significant.
Thank you so much. We can make that a ringtone. Yeah, I'm again having another bad luck Brian moment because of the few things that I actually stockpile, because I'm so against stockpiling. I hate industrialists who tell me that they stockpile like buttloads of minerals and stuff, because I'm like, that is money, and you could have money, and money is way better than things. And
But on the other hand, if you're good at the speculation thing, it can be a good way to save money
yeah, don't get
in
me
the long
wrong.
run.
I use it. I use it to my advantage. I specifically, my favorite is that Burn Jita is my very favorite time of year, because it means that I can stock up on a bunch of materials.
And make graphs.
Oh man, I love that graph, man. And I made more. I made a buttload of money this year too, and I didn't think I'd make half as much as I did. But like, I've just been in so many industry corps where they spend all of their profits on stockpiling just garbage, and I'm just so adamantly against most stockpiling, because I just don't think most people are competent enough to stockpile correctly. And one of the few
Yeah, if you're
things,
just stockpiling garbage, it's like speculating blindly. It's there's no point to it.
but like the one thing I keep in stockpile just because I burn through them and I hate going to go get them and they're not that expensive, is decryptors and data cores. because between those two and BPCs, then I can just invent whenever I need to invent, and I'll refill the stock when it goes empty. I really don't care. It's only like 10% of the stuff, and if it moves like a few percentage points up or down, it's only a few percentage points on a 10% production cost. So I don't care.
Well, the decryptors are easy too. The cycle on those is just faction warfare, right?
Yeah.
Data cores.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, data cores are a relatively unlimited market if the price isn't going to go up significantly because it's what people are willing to spend. And I know there are people out there with millions of LP that they could just dump if the price went up, so they would.
Or if it were easier to redeem all that LP for data cores. Even with the mass buy, it's not exactly the easiest thing in the world.
That is true, yeah.
All right, I need to bounce up and do the dishes, so I'm going to check out.
All right, thanks for stopping by. Steve, you're more than welcome to stay, and we can continue chatting if you'd like. I just fear that it's late where you are.
It is, but I'm currently on holiday, so I really don't care.
Oh, brilliant!
I've got days to burn before the end of this month, and due to an unfortunate incident with a colleague, I didn't get some of the days earlier this month, so I've still got 2 days left to book, and I'm off tomorrow, so that's all fine.
Well, that's fun. I've just been so freaking busy, and then my fun fund got eaten by my car because my car's an asshole.
I'm just so glad I don't drive a lot of the time.
It's
Glad
hard.
a lot of the time, rather than not driving. But
It's hard not to have a car in America, especially in the West.
yeah, Glasgow has great public transport, so I'm fine there.
Boise does not. I think we have like 2 buses.
That's not so good, no.
Yeah, it's everybody gets on the like they're a hippie commune thing, and f that, we don't want to spend money on it. So yeah, it's Boise is weird, man. And then I've been so obnoxiously busy with work because it's just constant go 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 run run run. It's this bleeding edge tech project, and
Yeah, that's always going to be something needs to be done 5 minutes ago. So, yeah. Hopefully, I'm not going to bore you because I know that I don't always have a lot to talk about.
oh, that's fine. It beats talking to the void. I feel very strange doing these streams solo because it's like I have madness. I'm just sort of talking to nothing.
Yeah, and then you get, even with other people, you then get those slightly uncomfortable delays when you're wondering, are they going to say something? Should I say something? Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. For Regex 21, owning a system is not quite so viable, but there are people that do system rentals. So you pay them ISK, and they strictly should be protecting your system in general if someone is trying to take over. They won't necessarily stop people roaming through to get you, but you get some protection.
Oh my glob, it's Sugar Kyle.
Yeah, that's why I said unreasonably significant. She asked.
I did.
Oh,
fit-
you're on.
I have all the space famous people on here.
And
Steve just seemed so lost for a second. He's you two are like, we don't know what to talk about, but we're gonna talk. We feel weird.
So I know Fox4 is putting out API stuff, and I haven't had a chance to crack it open. I really should do that tomorrow night. Are we going to get some better SDE stuff before the launch? Like, we're not going to get the SDE drop a week before the launch like we usually do, right?
I will be asking again for more SDE stuff, but it's obviously down to when they can get someone to get time on it. Getting the game itself working properly is going to be more important than getting the APIs out. I'm poking them about it, but in general, we'll just have to see.
Yeah, I agree that the API and dev stuff tends to be the last thing on the to-do list, and I wouldn't argue it otherwise. It's just, since we're changing the math and the equations and stuff, I'd rather get my hands around the queries now, because I am such a slow dev. I am so bad at developing code that I just need as much possible time as I can get.
Well, Steve doesn't seem to be tooting his own horn, but that is something that he's constantly working on, is getting that and getting more. He's quite adorable about it. He's like, thank you. Can I also have these 316 things? I love you. And then he gives teddy bears.
Cookies also work.
Yeah, the teddy bear's a hug because it's over Skype.
Ah. I get favors at work because my wife makes the best snickerdoodles on the planet.
We don't need to know about your favors. But I don't have cool API stuff. I was going to ask, since you're rolling around on CC and such, at least I think you're on CC. I didn't actually look to see if you were.
Yeah, it's on CC.
Have the bug fixes been hitting for some of the things that you've been looking at before?
We can look at the biggest one I remember running into, so let's go pull it up. The math on the Anshar was broken, and it is still broken. It's showing that you need additional capital components because that's what it would refine into.
Yeah, it's a known bug. We have mentioned it. It's just the in-type requirement, sorry, in-type materials table stuff hasn't had the recyclable stuff taken out of it.
Yeah, and I figured that stuff like that was going to come out of it. And then the other thing, I know that Mynnna said that this was a feature, not a bug. The duration, I can't do much about duration. I know that we just talked about decryptors are broken, and Invention's going to get another pass soon, trademark. Just the job time is twice that what it would have been on the original server. Personally, I'm just going to whine a little bit. I think that's high, but that's just a tiny little niggling thing.
Because I haven't done much with jump freighters, what's the difference in the copy time looking like?
The copy time is much shorter. I actually have a blueprint in a job.
Yeah. Because the full time to market is including the copy time as well as the build time and the invention time. So that's the way it's been worked out.
I'm back. What are you talking about?
Oh, I was whining about jump freighters because it's the specific thing that the corner I was trying to break, and yeah.
I just came to fill your shoes while you were gone. I haven't done a very good job, and I've probably tarnished your reputation, but I tried.
Really, you need to improve
Meh.
Mynna's reputation if you're going to do any damage. Yeah, I like the copy research time changes themselves. I just worry about the final build time changes. I can deal with it however it comes out. The build time has been the traditional bottleneck, and that's what you still optimize for, so take that as it will.
Yeah. Something which I'm expecting to see a lot more of is, instead of having like the copy slave vaults, your vaults are going to get used for pretty much everything. Although at the moment pretty much everyone will be manufacturing on the copy slaves as well.
Well, and that's always been something I've been an advocate for, even if I know that most people don't. They have sort of I mean, don't get me wrong. I have a copy bitch that does all the copies for like 8 characters, and the fact that that's getting reduced and changed, I think, is an overall good one. I worry about manufacturing times because the idea is that these run concurrently, and I kind of like stuff being not neat and synchronous. I'd rather things be weird so it's harder to optimize. So it drives OCD people crazy.
Maybe this is like your freedom. You no longer have to be OCD about these things.
Yeah. Have you seen the biggest thing to annoy OCD people with Titan materials?
No, I haven't been following that. I haven't built a supercap ever.
Yeah. Titan build materials are 556. Even at perfect, it's still 501, just to annoy them. And I think they should leave it that way.
I agree. It's just when it comes to real life production, nothing is that easy. Nothing fits into boxes that easily. So I like having asynchronous stuff and
That's why
doing
people make a lot of
optimizations.
money as production engineers, though.
Yeah, that's why I still have a job. It's why we pay a whole other guy to just watch it himself, like all the time. I get to just dabble in it until I hate it, and then I can go do something else. Thank God, because the actual automation stuff makes me want to eat my own tongue.
Yeah, I'm a design guy. Can do like basic tooling and whatnot, but not much beyond that.
Yeah, my department lives and dies on test time. We make our salaries in test time. We had a metric that every 40 seconds of test time cost us another $500,000 worth of machine for a certain part.
Ow, that's quite expensive.
Yeah, so they're on a big test time cut binge actually right now. They're doing the last cut ups for a for the rollout to high volume. The switch from research and development to high volume is really painful.
Yeah, that's something I'd actually like to see more of actually on Eve, because at the moment there's not a huge difference between a short run and long run. Yet there is a bit of a difference now due to the cost reduction with the number of hours, but it's not particularly significant.
The danger there is setting it up to where suddenly a new player can no longer compete again.
Of
Not in
course,
this case
yeah.
because they don't have ME5, but because they just don't have the money to do, huge runs.
Yeah, that is always a concern as well. So
Well, but the cost of the additional cost of doing more runs is that you are hedging against volatility. You're hedging that there will not be volatility. So traditionally, with most margins on the market for buildable materials have been tied extremely tightly to the instantaneous build cost, regardless of how long it takes to build the thing. People go, they run it in ISK per hour, and they say, oh, like even though a jump freighter would take 3 weeks to get to market, today with all of this stuff, if you reprocessed it today, it would be worth 5.5 billion or whatever the number is. And that's the number people go off of, not the it actually cost me 6.5, and over the course of that time, Moon Minerals did something funky, and now I'm screwed because I had to wait 3 weeks to get my thing out the door.
I've actually never put in the effort to look particularly closely at Tech 2, but you might have. Do Tech 2 ships track instantaneously the same way?
Everything does.
How far down the production chain do Tech 2 ships track, though? All the way back to the raw goo, or what?
No, they track. I always track it back to the advanced materials at the end of the moon chain. Tracking it further back is harder to predict, and I always just assumed the final there was a lot of wiggle room speculation wise for those final products, because that should move like minerals move, and tracking the even lower parts of it I didn't think added a lot of value. I should go do it, I just haven't.
Yeah, well, I'd be curious to see the results because, like I said, I haven't looked from all the way from the raws to the ships, but I know that the raw materials themselves, there's a disconnect as you move up the chain. Because if I'm running a reaction farm and I go and buy raw materials, after 1 week I'm going to have intermediate materials, and then I take those from my reactors and put them into the next reactor to make the advanced materials. So there's a 2 week lag time before I care, sort of, about the price in the market. Or that doesn't make any sense, but I think you know what I mean.
Well,
there's 2 weeks between me buying my raw materials and me putting my product on the market. I'm
there's also
buying every week, but
there's a bunch of other factors in that people are not just producing the entire chain, they're doing just the second part, or people are holding on to materials, and so the particular base item prices might be, I think, are far more volatile than the actual final item prices.
Yeah, I tend
no
to track
doubt.
one level.
Just my point is, though, you go back and as you get further down into that, there's a hell of a lot more lag time. And so I don't know how closely things track like that.
Yeah, like I saw it when I did an in-depth for freighters on raw minerals, and those absolutely track. Even though it's 8 days, the fastest you could get a freighter out the door is 8 days. They absolutely track to the day the price. And
yeah, no, I remember seeing that sheet or that graph.
Jump freighters, they might be closer to 2 or 3 days, just because the guys who produce the people who produce it are more competent, have more money, aren't doing it just for kicks. But the volume of people who buy jump freighters is so low that it makes it hard for it to rebound back up after stuff. So I'm hoping, my biggest hope in this change is that we stop seeing the instantaneous tracking to the raw materials, because it should no longer be that would be our baseline, because
You probably will, because right now you can go, hey, I'm going to refine this, and I know that I get this much ISK. After the patch, you'll get half that much ISK.
Well, and it wasn't even refining, because, I mean, if you refine a Tech 2 item, you don't get the invention level materials back. You get the BPO level materials back, which is like half anyway. It's weird that even though you have and anyway, for most other ships, you still only have a 2 or 3 day lead time. So the difference in getting, I don't think it swings so widely most of the time that it's going to eat your lunch, because you should be picking something that has enough to cushion that. But for the really big stuff, for the really volatile stuff, it can absolutely kill you. That, like, if you went in and you bought all this stuff and you went to go build something, you went to go build shield modules, right? You said that your favorite null entity is just loving shield this week, and so you've decided to spend an entire month building a chain for that. Ignore the T2 math, you can't actually do that, but imagine that you could. And 3 days into your build, that your favorite guys have decided that no, armor is now the meta.
They realize that shields are awful when bummers are a thing.
Yeah, I wasn't there for exactly that. that now armor is their meta, and now you have this whole job that you were going to make a bunch of money on, and now it's locked into the system, and either you eat the 100% of the fees and materials, or you just let it run out and try to collect the pieces at the end. I think that making a very long build time is going to be a careful bet to make.
Yeah, we'll see. One thing that occurred to me there when you were talking about Tech 2 connected to advanced materials. So, I don't know how widespread it is in the rest of the CFC, but not a single drop of the moon goo that Goonswarm mines makes it to Jitta. It's all sold to reactors who react it and then eventually take it to Jitta. But that kicks it 2 weeks to a month up the chain, as I was saying. So, kicks it 2 weeks to a month up the chain. And so, in theory, you would expect, the ferrogel there is just replacing the demand for whatever goes into it. I don't know how much that's true in practice, though. And it'll be interesting to see if it really takes off the way I'm hoping it will, and we consume all of our advanced materials locally, and it never hits Jitta, and we kick it, another 2-3 layers up the chain, and it's just Tech 2 ships and stuff that we're not buying there. What that's going to do, that might contribute to unlinking some of the stuff like you were talking about too.
Yeah, I agree. I find it difficult to imagine that of all of the moon goo that you guys have in the West, that you can actually consume it all in-house. Like, I get that there are portions of it you definitely could. Like, I can see fulleриdes and maybe some of the higher end, what are they? The photonic material.
The minor materials. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, like I said, I don't know for sure, and it'll depend on how much it takes off, of course. But if it does take off and we are eating up most of our own supply, it'll be fun to watch either way.
And that should provide again that if you guys can hit that goal, it incentivizes a whole other set of options. It brings into the fold again, alchemy, but again the refining changes. I never actually looked into the stuff, so
Alchemy did get compensated for with the refinery changes, so it comes out to the same yield, or the same overall amount of materials when you refine it as it does now.
Just taking a quick look at the reactions table that I've got from the numbers, there are definitely people selling on the open market for a large chunk of it. And there are some reactions which are just seriously not worth it. But there are others where the profit margin is probably worthwhile.
well, and that and participating in the moon stuff now myself, you see that there's definitely a wave that moves through that's like, oh, now this is sexy. I'll jump into it, make my money, because it's easy money if you know what you're looking for, and you can change your reaction.
There is.
I mean, it's effort free. It's nearly effort free to just fill a POS up and let it react at whatever level you care to participate. We actually have a halfway decent moon in LowSec, something I never thought I'd actually own, and so we keep a reaction running all the time, and I keep wanting to go and turn on the extra POSes we have that we can go react at. I was going to do drugs, but I just can't get rid of the supply. I can produce like 4 times what my corp can eat, and I just can't sell it in Jita, and it pisses me off.
Yeah, you're absolutely excuse me. You're absolutely right about the waves through Moongoo too. You see it moving from mineral to mineral, but the whole advanced material market is on an upswing right now.
Yeah, that's what I was hinting at,
And
that I made a bunch of money after Burn Jita, is that I bought a whole bunch after the post Burn Jita slump. So I bought an extra set of cycles on that, and then rode the wave up, and then also had the extra boost from cheap materials.
yeah, Well, what I'm wondering, and this is probably going to set off all the conspiracy theorists again, is, I mentioned that we have huge reactor farms out in Declan, although not necessarily the exact numbers, but it's enough that I can imagine we may have pushed people out of the market, and so the upswing is that finally taking effect, prices rising as the long cycles mean that it takes a while for people to get back into the markets. So, kick that another layer up the chain if we can use it all in our own production. Even if we take it back to Jeddah and sell it there as ships or whatever. And maybe Dinsdale is righter than he thinks, or righter than I think he is, rather.
Well, and
Probably not, though.
even with all of the industrial and economic might of CFC and Goonswarm, it's still, you guys can still only account for a chunk, not a huge chunk of the pie. It's still going to have to, you still need character hours to get through all of the materials that everybody uses.
Yeah.
So where you guys might be able to jump on a particular item, and you might be like producing for the Goon meta may no longer be something that outside people can really make money on.
Yeah, no, and that's the more likely outcome. I would imagine that if we try to control a market in Jeddah, what happens is, traders just flock to it and buy out our attempts to undercut the market and drive things down, just drive people out. And there's a lot of people with a lot of money who trade in Jeddah, so I doubt we can outbuild their wallets. But it'll be fun to try.
And again, the more you feed into it, the more it becomes, I know that the whole game theory thing, I knew you were going to make that move, so I made this counter move, and you knew that I was going to counter move, so you countered, and all that crap. So it leads to a far more interesting ecosystem, even for everyone at every level.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting about to the end of my allotted time for this, and I'm still going to have to edit down the stuff so that it's in smaller chunks. I might actually have enough that I can put them into 15-minute pieces, I hope. Oh, and then I've been told by my co-hosts of my other thing, to pimp the Hydrostatic podcast, we did also talk with Blake Armitage of K162Space.com on our podcast last night about industry stuff specifically, since he's a big capital producer, and so we dug into a lot of the mechanics we expect to see. So if you liked this, you should go check out that, and send questions either to me or to the podcast or to my Twitter, or just any way you can think of getting in touch with me. Email, it all gets through, and yeah. So if you have questions, send them along. I'll get, either I can answer them or I can get them to the people who can answer them better than me. Again, thank you so much, Steve and Mynnna, for coming down to this. It's really a lot of fun, and thanks, Miss Kyle, for lurking in the background.
I lurk.
Yeah. She's noisier on Twitter. Not Twitter. Skype. I knew what I meant. You'll find that out when I use the wrong word. I know exactly what I mean. People tend to know what I mean.
They
But
both start
sometimes
with an
it's just
S.
the wrong word. Yeah. ST, what's the difference?
And you're all more than welcome to come back on the show if you guys want to come back and talk more shop or investigate things or just shoot shit. That's fine. I'm more than happy to have extra people on this.
But my radio presence is so awful.
Hey, at least you're not cutting in and out this time.
Well, there is that, I suppose.
I'll certainly think about coming back on. Normally this would be very, very late for me. But other than that, yeah,
Well, and I'm
sure.
running a weekend stream that's in a far more EU-friendly time.
Yeah, that's 6 p.m. GMT,
Think so.
something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm normally awake by then, so.
Yeah, the hope is that I could at least get maybe get a couple of CCPers on, but I guess I gotta get questions put together because they're not allowed to just go off the cuff.
Yeah, people are normally happy when they know what they're going to be asked.
And I want to try and drive all of this stuff to have better show notes because I ramble. And yeah, I do want to try and get onto the new API stuff before the weekend, so at least I can poke you, Steve, with personal reactions. I'm sure it'll be fine. Uh, I my design choices are generally poor because I'm more hacker than real dev.
Yeah. Well, I'm not really a dev as such. I'm a sysadmin, so my code tends to be somewhat painful for other people. But yeah, I'm currently waiting a bit more just to let things settle out and seeing if we can get a proper data feed and then getting all the other APIs, which I think we're going to need. But yeah, sometime soon I'm going to be starting work on updating my own calculator, or rather, updating the calculator, which I'm halfway through building, and I stopped when things were changing. So
Yeah, I made some changes in the hope that I could uh, copy successes from another tool, but then I realized that trying to do this without the queries and the structures from the SDE was just going to be a bad time. I'm trying to. I know that Mynnna, you talked on Ali's stream on Saturday about how you don't want. It's a bad idea to have this stuff just be solvable because as soon as it's a solvable problem, people will just solve it. But I can't not solve it, so I really want to try and build the better industry tools so I can really leverage everything and make the best decisions and make the most money and keep
Well,
my
yeah.
title.
When I talk about solved problems being bad, I don't mean that, you should not. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the means to make the best decision at any given time. I'm just saying that what that best decision is shouldn't always be the best decision.
I agree, and it should never be locked in stone. And thankfully, T2 hasn't always been that way. I mean, it's not great. There are only a few decent choices to make, but flexibility has always been the thing that made me money, and I'm really really excited for all these new choices to try and win.
Right. Yeah. I plan to be exceedingly lazy and just build the same thing all the fucking time myself, but
Well, that's fine, and I'll just get more margin, and you can still sit on your trillions of ISK that I don't have.
yes.
yeah, it should always be possible to make a profit on stuff. I really don't like it when I see markets and there's no margin at all of any sort. That suggests that people don't have the information being given to them that says you shouldn't do this. With any luck, we'll see some changes with the new API, which might suggest that people aren't going to make it that way, unless obviously there's a massive shift in the market or something like what's happened with the Procurer.
So the thing I'm hoping, and the thing that got me in trouble with Mr. Dinsdale, was that my hope is that the added job costs and the new UI and the different costs per system should cause enough incentive for people to stop doing the if I do it myself it will be cheaper thing, because that's always, I know that there's a pretty large segment of people that
Me.
just want to do it and feel the joy of building that ship for myself. It's just when they do that, that should only account for a very small slice of the market. And the hope is that we can stop doing the really bad decisions of, oh man, my friend quit the game and I got this blueprint that's big and expensive, and I'm just gonna mine all the minerals to go make it, and I'm gonna make my 0.1% margin and no crap. So I'm hoping that the improvements on the UI will help make it more obvious that people are making bad decisions, and those bad decisions should stop. Should less bad decisions should drive margins up.
Yeah, people should always have the chance to make a bad decision, but it should be relatively obvious that they're doing so.
All right, I'm going to stop and restart the stream. You guys are more than welcome to keep lurking in the channel here, but I won't be recording that, just so you guys know.
Yeah, I should probably head off and actually get some sleep so I'm not absolutely dead when I have to go back to work on Friday.
Thanks again for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.